Thanks for joining today. The topic we're doing is self-healing and monitoring in a DevOps world. So we've got a bunch of cool toys we're playing with. We're going to be going over monitoring, self-healing, ChatOps, the CI/CD pipeline, Hubot, and all this is going to be tied together in persistent chat. So it's a lot of cool stuff we're going to go over. A little bit about myself. My name is Lucas Gravley. I am a build architect in HP. I've been with the company about 5 years now. And the organization I work with, we help deploy applications across all of HP. So we do build, deploy, source control management, quality, all tons of various tools. So a lot of big stuff. So here at HP, we're trying to get better in line with DevOps, get more agile. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to do it better internally. So we'll move on and talk about some of the fun stuff we've learned over the years and what we've seen, some of the learning pains of DevOps. So some early thinking myths people were going through, go do what some unicorn is doing. That may not be the right idea for you. You're not the same company as this unicorn. You're not building the same tool. You're not on the same step as the transition. So trying to jump from where you are to where they are instantly, you're going to build yourself tons of technical debt. It's going to be a pain. It's not going to work. You're going to get a whiplash from the culture. So try to stay away from doing that. Do what you do. Find your rhythm. The other one, stand up a DevOps department. Again, the idea of DevOps is to break down these silos. So standing up more silos is kind of counterintuitive of what you want to do. And the idea is, if you try to build this team of innovation and they come back, everyone else kind of feels second best against you. So again, that's not a winning move. Another one, everything has to go to the cloud to be DevOps. And from all the presentations you've seen, everyone's talking about, the iron on the grid, the mainframes. You don't have to have the cloud for everything. And the trick is just automation. Work all your tools together. Get them working. So again, you don't have to just be cloud to do this. Some of the fun ones, DevOps replaces ITIL and ITSM. This isn't true. DevOps really helps define some of the best practices and the ways to work all this. So they actually work pretty well hand in hand, helping shape it. The same thing with DevOps and Agile. They work hand in hand, helping you streamline your process, making the team work closer together. So some of the fun stuff we learned along the way. You got to start small and build trust. And everyone's talked about this. It's a culture shift. And the idea is if you try to make everyone make this massive culture change overnight, it's not going to work. They're not going to like the feeling. It's just not going to work. They're going to reject the idea. So the idea is to build these champions on your team. Let them start with a piece of the culture. Let them snowball the idea. Find what works for them. And let it grow internally to your team. Once they find what works, they'll be the evangelists, and they'll push it forward throughout your team. So this comes to the next idea of address the real issues of trust. And this is all about transparency and getting your teams to work together. If dev doesn't understand what ops is doing, you're not trying to work towards the same goal. If you don't know what they're trying to gauge against, they're not helping you the same way. So both sides have to understand what's in your backlog. What are your metrics? What are you being tested against? So on the bottom, you'll see our live chat happening right now. So things are happening. So at HP, we have a DevOps Vision. And we want to talk about what makes DevOps work for us. And it's really simple in these 4 pillars. And if you look at the graph below, it really helps outline and shape what this all is. So on the outside, you've got your continuous analysis. And this is the feedback loop. This is increasing the visibility and alignment with your stakeholders. And the idea is you need to be on the same page with your teams and your partners, and they need to see where you are. This feedback loop allows the business to play that role in your product and help you shape your backlogs and everything that needs to be done. They should always know where you are. And the idea of this is ChatOps is going to help bring a lot of this into visibility. So naturally inside everything, you've got your continuous integration. And this is all about moving at the speed of the business. And the idea is doing these faster, smaller deploys. When you do these smaller increments, it means you're going to do these more concise fixes, and you're not going to do these large multiple changes that are usually bug-prone and full of errors and causing you downtime. And the idea is this whole thing should be automated. This whole pipeline from dev to pro should be working. You should be able to kick it off at one end, and it goes all the way to the other side. And the thing is, automated testing should be part of this. Most teams I've seen it internally where you're on a time crunch, you're trying to move forward. Testing is one of the easiest things to say, we'll get back to that when we have a chance and we'll move on. It was working last time. So the idea is you have to make it part of the pipeline, make it integrated, make it to where you can't rip this part out. So naturally on top of your CI, you've got your CD or your continuous delivery and deployment. And the idea is just decreasing the cost of building applications. Infrastructure as a service reduces, keep the lights on work. It allows you to work towards innovation. You're not spending the money trying to keep your app up and having engineers working through the night to pick up the same application. Instead, they're getting to work on innovation. They're doing what they need to do. Your environment should be fluid, like a glass of water. I mean, it should be able to scale up, rebuild. And the idea behind this is having the stock images that are parameterized. So I'm sure most of you, like us, we have environments where we have a legacy machine that's been around and it's running a different kernel set. It's got 15 different libraries that are glued together, and it works for you amazingly until it disappears, and then you're in a ton of trouble. You've got to move away from those and help standardize your pipeline and make sure that if these machines go away, you can rebuild them quickly. So, and to conclude on that, you've got your continuous operations. Oh, I jumped way far. There we go. So, and this is all about improving the quality and performance. And so, on this, you want to be able to track your metrics and understand what's going on with your environment, correlate the issues, aggregate all the data out. This is really the base of monitoring. And all this should be happening in real time. It does you no good if your application goes down and 2 hours later your monitoring starts sending you emails saying, hey, your environment's dead. That was worthless. So you've got to make sure that it's all happening in real time, letting you know, hey, things are getting bad. It's trending up. Start looking at it, understanding. And then as these things are happening, you need to look at it and start figuring out what is happening. What can we push to our backlog? What new monitors do we need to build so we can say, this won't come up again? We can find it, and if it is something we can fix, let's go self-heal it. So like other companies, we have some challenges to do DevOps, and we're here to address some of those that we tackled. We had a cumbersome change record process. There wasn't a lot of automation. There was tons of steps. It was old. It was monolithic. You would send off paperwork to a team that you had never talked to. Some guy that you've never met is validating the steps that you're actually doing. It didn't make sense, this strict process. You'd send something off to another country, they may be on vacation for the week. So your process is stuck and hung. So we had to do something to fix that. Another one, the constant battle of dev and ops just really not working well together. They're too siloed out. It seems like the dev team would take their newest release, we'd throw it over the wall and say, good luck, ops. They don't understand, was this a bug fix? Was this a patch? Is this a brand new tool? Was this a UI redesign to make things better? They had no idea. You're not on the same page with them. So we needed to address that as well. And on top of all this, there wasn't a great way for us to see what our environment's actually doing. Were all your systems up, all the way from dev to pro, all the helper machines, are they actually behaving healthy? Do we even know where our issues were being introduced? Do you know if your unit test should have caught the latest bug in dev when it got pushed to your scaling environment? Should it have been caught there when it was scaled out? How's the user experience? This is something a lot of people step away from and haven't really made a big push towards, is understanding you're building these applications for the user. They need to make sure that the experience, how is it? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it staying the same? You really need to find that metric and find what works for you. And then the last thing, I'm sure most of you have seen this as it goes on, is scope creep. How many times have you gone to do an upgrade and you pushed out for 3 different fixes, and by the time it went to production, you have 20 different ones that just went in? You got to watch out for that scope creep and understand what is actually being pushed. And then after you have all this data, actually using it and analyzing it. Being able to correlate the issues and understand, is this something that's happening weekly? Is this something that's happening monthly? What are the trends? What is really happening in the world? And then really understanding that environment pattern. If this just happened 1 week, okay, that may not be a new pattern, but now if it happened twice tomorrow, we've got to start understanding what is the pattern that caused this. So being able to actually use that data. So I'm probably could talk a long time about all this stuff, but we're going to try to stay towards the monitoring and self-healing. So on to monitoring. What are we trying to monitor? Well, you want to get everything. And the ideas behind this and the principles are fairly simple. Your monitoring should just work. You should be able to pull it out of the box, turn it on. You don't need to hook up 15 machines and 14 different services and 3 backing databases to make it all work. You just need to turn this on. It needs to store your data and work. And the thing is, if you go the other route and you build these big monolithic crazy contraptions of open source, what happens when you leave that project? The next person picks it up and goes, this isn't me. We're throwing it away, we're starting over. There's tons of loss and technical debt that you're going to build going that route. So once you set up the monitoring, you should be able to at least hit the key components. And the ideas behind this for us are the four major things: the network, the services, the application, and the user experience. And your monitoring should be smart enough to actually figure out the difference between those four. It does me no good if my self-healing kicks in and starts restarting my box if it's dead and the network's out. I've only created more problems, got more teams involved. So your monitoring has to understand the differences. The thing is, it should all be extensible. You should be able to create custom monitors as needed. A lot of tools allow you to have your basic monitors and things like that, but as soon as you start building a product and you start having your own issues, you need to be able to monitor those. So for us, we had a memory issue a while back, and we didn't have a good way to actually check the Java heap. So what we did is we created a custom monitor that went, extracted all that data out of the Java heap, wrote it to a database so we could actually parse it and go, okay, how's it going over the last 2 hours, the last 4, last week? Being able to grab that data and say, now we can at least figure out what the trends are. And this pushes into the data mining, being able to actually see what this data is, diagnose it, figure out what kind of trends you're building. And then the thing is actively using the data. The idea behind this is it does you no good if you look at this data once and go, okay, here's my baseline, we're good. And then you never go back and realize, okay, we were at a high point, we're at a low point. You've actually got to use this data over and over. Find the cadence that works for you. I work on several different apps, and we all look at it differently. So really, it's up to you what works. And again, all this should be automated. We're all here for CI, CD, and DevOps, and the trick is automation is key. So your monitoring environment should self-deploy. When you spin up new machines, the monitoring should connect to those agents, figure out, through config files, what actually needs to be monitored. As you're spinning down, those monitors need to disappear. No one wants to get spammed from a machine that's disappeared from the world, and now it's telling you it's dead. So you have to write smart about that. And again, it's got to encompass the whole environment. You've got to make sure dev, test, production, all that's good. So some people stop here at monitoring, and the real trick is you've got to keep pushing forward. And the idea behind this is self-healing. And what does self-healing do for you? And well, the idea behind this for us is getting the alerts and the updates of how it's actually helping us. So it can be done really simply, just scripting. You've got your simple scripts, your Bash, Perl, PowerShell, Coffee scripts. And these are for solving common problems. We had a box that a JBoss machine that just JBoss would turn off every once in a while. So we need to figure that out. We're going to figure out the logs. So until then, we're going to self-heal it. We're going to get it to restart itself and make it self-happy. So that works for that. That's simple scripting. And now you've got your complex scripting. Now this is the idea behind, most of you probably run applications that are massive. You've got databases, you've got web layers, you've got applications, load balancers, and all these things have to talk to each other in certain ways and establish certain handshakes. Well, this is where you need to call out to your automation environment and say, let's get these scripts, let's break it down to parameters, procedures, and steps, and get it to the point where you can actually reuse this information. And this leads to reproducible steps in the APIs. Being able to leverage all this information. So for our ChatOps environment that we use in our self-healing calls out, we use one script that calls out and does all of our updates. Now that script can be parameterized 100 different ways. And you can pass it a single string, or you can pass it a JSON payload and let it throw all the information out there. The idea is to make scripts that are reusable. Make it work for you, because the idea is if I have to change one update and I have to go to 100 different places to do it, you're going to be in trouble in the long run. And making sure you actually get the alerts from your system. This is the idea of getting the different alerts in different mediums. And what I mean by that is the idea of if one of my pings go off and my monitor kicks that, I can take an email. I'll go look at that later and figure out why we had a quick network spike. If my self-healing kicked off and went and deleted a bunch of directories and it's telling me that I need to go check this out, it may need to throw an API thread to my room to say, here's what I cleaned, this is what happened, this is how long it took. So that type of information. It may be 2 in the morning, my application's dead, and self-healing didn't fix it. I want that to start texting my cell phone and say, hey, if you don't get up, this is only going to get worse for you. So the idea of getting those different notifications and being able to do that. And again, this should all be integrated to your pipeline. It should be documenting the process as it does it. It should be telling you, I did this, when and where and how. It should be continuous. This is all automation. It should be working 24/7 for you. And I really like the next one. It's vigilant, the proactive self-healing. So we have the idea that there's certain things you can't automate. It's missing the APIs. You're messing with something that it's just not there. For us, we had one where we were creating SSL certs when they were going out for our websites. So we could automate all kinds of great information and generating the keys and everything, but at some point you had to pick it up, take it to another place, load all that information, get it back, and then load it. So we automated it, did the manual step, automated it. But what we did on our side was do this proactive self-healing, which was the idea of letting your team know that, 2 weeks before it goes out, hey, your environment's about to go down. You're going to have problems. You need to go fix this. And as it gets closer to those 2 weeks, it yells a little bit louder at the team saying, hey, this is only going to get worse for you. So, and the last thing, the notifications. It should be part of your change process pipeline. It should be informing everyone along the way that I did this, I checked this out, I did this work, etc. So it should be making sure that everyone's aware of what's going on. So you've got all this data, but you need somewhere to actually look at it. And really the trick is to tie everything together. And you've got 3 major groups that need this data. So your DevOps team, they want somewhere where they can write automation. They can make reproducible scripts. They can say, I want to run this on Pro with X, Y, and Z, or I want to run this on Dev with 1, 2, and 3. And same script, just different variables, and it works. They want to be able to see the information about self-healing and understand, okay, self-healing kicked off today. Okay, great. Self-healing kicked off 4 times in a row. Okay, something's bad. I need to actually go look at this and really investigate what's going on in the back end. It's a great place to find some reference material when you're bringing on new teams to say, hey, what happened last time we had a memory issue? Well, go check the room. Go look last week. Look for the keywords and see what you can find. You need a place to monitor production, fix the issues. Posting questions back and forth, this is great. This is the idea where your dev and ops team are in the same room, and the ops team can say, hey, the system's down. I saw self-healing kicked it, but I'm still seeing the system down. What's going on? You have that constant feedback loop of dev and ops going, I'm working on it. I'm taking responsibility for this. I'm looking. And the traceability to say who's doing what. So this is really helpful in that area. Your management has a different view. They may want to just have a production dashboard and understand, what's alive, what's happy, track deployments as they're going on, and make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to, everything's happening as it was supposed to. And the next one's a fun one, management insight. How many times has your management come towards you and said, hey, can you stop what you're doing, go get me this information about these 10 users, I need you to go break this down and bring it back and bring it back in this format, and you're like, okay, I have to stop what I'm doing, go run all this data, and come back with it and hand it off. Well, the idea is, can you teach a bot to do all this stuff? So the idea is teaching these bots to say, I'm sitting in the room waiting, so my boss could come in and say, okay, give me this information. The bot does it, I'm still in the room working on innovation, everything's good. And you get that feedback loop that's really helpful. Now your users have a different view, and they want to be able to validate their experience and understand, HP is a global company, we're huge. And so we run these applications across the entire world. So let's say in Israel, somebody comes in, they say, hey, I can't reach the site, it must be dead. It'd be really helpful if they could go to a room and say, hey, is it only me having this problem, or am I having a side issue? Is my credential broken? Is it the whole world? What's actually happening? They want to be able to provide some feedback on your environment and say, hey, thanks for the last fix. My user experience is better, or no, it didn't get better. Well, let me pull up the data and actually look what is going on with the system right now. They may want to get some high-level information about the application and be able to post questions. I'm sure if you have a self-service environment that you have users, there's typically, when your new customers and stuff come on, they don't understand the basics, and they just need to ask those quick questions where someone can give them the answer. They can move on and grow from that point. So you may need multiple tools to solve all these, but for dev and ops, ChatOps is the answer for us. So what is ChatOps? I think it's turned into this big term in the last year or so. Well, ChatOps was actually coined by GitHub in 2013, and it's the idea of putting tools in the middle of the conversation. And the ideas behind it are really simple. You need somewhere to bring your teams together so they can talk, they can work together and understand what's going on. The tool's got to be simple. It's got to just work for you. It shouldn't feel like a burden, a new tool that you constantly have to log in and check. And the idea is having the bots, as many as you need, and that's the tool of it. So for HP, we had some needs for ChatOps, what actually worked for us. So we needed it to be available anywhere, whether it be your desktop, your mobile, your browser. I'm sure y'all have seen it popping up in the bottom right corner. That's the desktop client, so my teams are talking back and forth right now. So being able to get that real-time notification and see who's asking me questions, what's going on in the rooms. You subscribe to these rooms, so if it's something that's important to me, I'll be listening. If it's not, you're going to have to come, say my name in the room, and it'll pop up. Mobile. Now, this is a great idea. This is being able to, from my phone, reach the environment and say, how is everything doing? Like I said, when we had these issues where our application may have an issue at 2 in the morning, I can pull up my cell phone and say, okay, Hubot, go fix this right now. It picks up that, verifies me through my credentials, and goes and fixes it. I didn't have to wake up, load my laptop, go through the VPN to get all the way in. You have that availability. And then the browser. So whether you want to pick up your browser and say, okay, we're seeing what's going on with the API threads. Let me just pull it up real quick and take a quick look. Hey, thank you so much. So this brings the visibility to all your parties. And the idea behind this is the collaboration. You're getting all these teams to work together and share data in real time. They're sharing it together, building this constant feedback loop. Your end users are able to go in there and say, yes, this is working for me. No, this isn't working for me. What's being done about it? And then you have the auditability. Everyone can go into the room and say, this was done last week. This is how we resolved this problem. You don't have to solve the same problem over and over and try to build it from the ground up. It's already there. The information is available for you. And the most powerful part of all this is really the bot interaction. It's your most powerful teammate. You think about being able to train your own teammate, supply him all the information you have, teach him how to solve all these issues, and he doesn't forget it. He doesn't go on vacation. He doesn't go on break. He's working for you 24/7. And the idea, he's actually able there to do other things like validate powers. And what I mean by this is the idea of saying, hey, I want to push this to production right now. I'll tell it to go do that. And it says, hey, you didn't run this through dev. It didn't pass the test. Everything's wrong. You're not allowed to do this right now. It can help figure out what's going on and stop these false jumps to production or outages that you may have overlooked. He's also able to do all this graphing for you. He's showing you what's going on with your environment in seconds. So as he's pulling data through these APIs and everything and saying, a user comes in and says, hey, something's not acting right. Well, let me ask the bot, graph me the last 2 hours. How's the load looking? Okay, it's looking good. Let's figure out where we need to go from there. You can see and you can move and triage problems very quickly. And he's running these pipelines for you. He's giving you that transparency. So when you're telling him, hey, go run an upgrade, he says, okay, I checked it out into dev. Your unit test passed. I pushed it to ITG. It's scaled correctly. Your variance on user experience is right in the margin. We're good. I'm pushing it to production now. And you can see everything that was done along the way. He gives you that top-level visibility. So you're probably asking yourself, how much is this going to cost you? And really, deploying DevOps is a function of doing business. Basically, think of it as the idea is you're shifting your investment and choosing where you're actually going to spend time. Really think about in your environment how much time you're wasting right now in your current pipeline. All the time you're sending off this paperwork and you're waiting for somebody else to come back. You're waiting hours for manual intervention. You're doing these manual upgrades and tests and you're crunching these numbers like I stated. There's tons of cycles that are just constantly being burned out there. And what we're doing is you're removing these cycles. You're giving them back to the team with all this automation that's easily reproducible. And as your standard process pipeline is streamlined, you start building these champions on your team who are evangelizing and showing you, hey, this is the right way. We're going to keep constantly building on top of this. This is building that snowball idea of the culture changing where the team is actually empowering themselves to actually get better. So the savings, what are you getting back from all this? Well, you've been at the conference. You've seen all this information. The CI/CD pipeline, it's going to remove weeks from your cycle. Depending on where you are, you've seen it. Depending on where you are in your cycle, you're going to notice it's going to get better and faster and quicker. Your operation costs are going to be cut down because you're removing this keep the lights on work because you have infrastructure as a service. Your machines are constantly being rebuilt instead of going, okay, I've got to go provision this now. It's going to take me a week. No, they're back up immediately. You're doing cost avoidance because you have monitoring and self-healing, keeping your application alive and healthy and happy. And you're helping eliminate all this technical debt. You're doing these faster, smaller deploys that are removing these massive bug fixes that were causing you these outages and problems. And the main one, collaboration. You get to see these teams working together in real time and saving you money. So we've talked about it a lot, But I think it'd be a lot easier to actually just show you a lot of this fun stuff. So we'll do a little live demo. I'll walk you through our persistent chat, and we'll do a little bit of interaction. We'll look up some data in the system. I'll show you some of the common commands that the bot has and what we've taught it. We'll actually go graph some data out in our production environments. We'll show you our dashboards. We'll do some fun automation. We'll do some self-healing, which is fun. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of the chaos monkey, but I'm going to kick one off and go break something, and we'll watch it fix it. And then we'll do a deployment right after that. So we've got some fun stuff to do. So let me hop out of here. All right. Awesome. Perfect. So, okay. So y'all can see over there. Good deal. So this is our tooling that we chose to go with. It's a tool called Flowdock. It works very well, and the idea behind it is it's got a bunch of APIs and connections that work for us. So I'll walk you through quick if you're not familiar with it. On your left-hand side, you've got the different rooms. These are the idea of separating different ideas and people who need to talk together. So you may have like the electric cloud team or our does demo that I'm going to do some demoing in. You may have GitHub Enterprise or use IT, some internal tooling that we use. So the idea is to build these rooms as needed for getting the ideas across that you're trying to work together with. On your top hand, you can actually see who's in the room. So I've got my coworker Daniel Perez in here, James. We got Hammer, that's my bot. I like the idea. It's very funny that, you know, this big talk about how when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And he's been out there for a while just doing that. And then I have myself. So on your right-hand side, this is the information. This is your mailbox and your API threads where you're storing this information about what's going on in the room. You can see Nagios information and things like that on what's going on with your environment. And down the middle is where you really have the meat of the tool. This is your persistent chat. And the chat starts as soon as the room starts. So I can go back for days, weeks, etc. It keeps pulling the data. So the idea is, a lot of people see this and they're like, okay, that's a ton of data, it's kind of hard to follow. But the idea is you make it simple with being able to see the different conversations, they're color-coded, and the search functionality. You can start looking for keywords, or you can start looking for words that have actually been in sentences. So ITG, that's our testing environment. I could say, okay, what happened in ITG? Well, this was a conversation we had a while back about what was going on. We found a blocking session. Okay. You can see JBoss and another ITG was having an issue. So you can do this. You can actually tag these things and say, you know, you can see the different things. This is a blocking session, Oracle. So now this information is easy to follow. You can come back at a later date with a new team and say, what is happening in the world out there? Well, you know, what happened last week with the memory spike? Well, look it up. You can see. We can look up that word. It'll start trying to pull it up. Memory spike. There it is. Here's our memory spike. We can actually pull up the data and see, yep, there was a spike in our memory right there. We need to go actually look at it. So you can find this information. It's easy to find. And the second thing is being able to mention people and call them out in a room and say, you know, what are you doing? So I could say this is kind of hard looking over the side of this. So what that does is it calls one of my teammates and says, hey, what's going on? I could be calling him to a specific problem, a specific issue. Hard. So you can call it and you can see in real time, okay, he sees my message. What's going on? Okay, he's able to come back and post this information. He can tag that information and say, this is what's going on. This is what I found. So you have this instant feedback, as you can see. You can start having your teams working together or posting messages overnight to each other. So let's move on to asking the bot to do some information. So like I said, Hammer's his name, so that's what he responds to. So I'll say, Hammer, help. What can you do for me today? Well, he comes back and says, these are all the commands I know. Well, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hubot. He's an open source technology. It's very cool. He plugs into multiple different chat options. And out of the box, he comes with 10, 15 commands to do basic information and things like that. But the idea is to take from that and grow. So we've got him trained to go graph data, to run commands from in our electric flow backend. We've got him able to deploy and all these other great commands. So let's actually go kick off a job. Let's actually do that chaos monkey. So let's ask him, what roles do I have? And this is about the roles delegation and the delegation of powers. So he's coming back and telling me, Okay, I have these roles. I have admin, upgrade, ping, backup, execute, chaos. I am an admin, so we're going to make that happen. So what I could do is tell him that I don't have this role, and we can watch him just not let me do this command. So I'll tell him I don't have this role. Okay. Okay, so he's telling me you can't do that. So if I tell him, hey, I want to go run this job, this chaos monkey, and go break an environment out there, you can see he's going to come back and say access denied. You don't have these permissions. You're not allowed to do this. So this is being able to tell people certain permissions and properties. So I'll tell him to give me back my power. All right. And I'll tell him to actually go do this job. Let's go break something. So I asked him to go break it. He's going to come back up and say, okay, I've done it. I broke something. We used the automation backend of electric flow to actually go do this. So I could actually go figure out what he did break and say, Hammer, what is that EC status? And if I could actually click stuff. There we go. That is really... Oop. Perfect. So he's telling me, okay, I went out, I killed a step, we ran JBoss, and something blew up in another environment. I know what that is because I wrote a lot of this, but the idea is he's going to go break an SCM tool of ours. So if we were to go out here, we could see that our monitoring and self-healing is actually going to catch it. Now, in an effort to save time and all that, I haven't got it going that fast, but we could see right here, this was the last time he actually went. And maybe he'll pop up in a second, but you can see that it posted the room. This is talking about that script of being able to run the script more than one time and pass different data. So this one's just a simple string, but later we'll show you where it's passing massive amounts of data. But you can see that it went out, it found that it wasn't running. It actually went to go fix it. If I actually click on the link, it'll open a new link on a browser and say, okay, this is what happened. This is the link to what actually it did. It found this job. It's trying to heal JBoss. If I go look at the actual logging, you can see exactly what it found on the system. It found that JBoss wasn't running, so the idea is it called Flowdock. It said, hey, I found this. There's a problem out there in the world. I'm going to stop the services, make sure everything's running in the correct order. I'm going to bring it back up, and then I'm going to come back. So you can see that you have all that information. You're able to triage this and go, this is what's happening now, when, and where. And you have the system of record to go back and say, this is what was actually done about it. So we can jump to the monitoring backend that does a lot of the work for us. So for us, we chose Nagios. It works really well for us. Like I said, you want something that actually works for you. It may not be the answer for you, but for us, it worked really well. And so we were able to set up all these monitors. I think at this point we're upwards of 1,100 monitors over these few instances. So we're looking over some of our applications and things like that and what's going on. This is live production. This is what's going on in the world right now for us. So you can see we monitor all these applications. We'll just jump into one right here. So Electric Commander, or Electric Cloud. I'm going to get that word right. So you can see that there's some base monitoring that Nagios does out of the box. It's checking the processes. It's checking the ping, making sure these basic things work. But when I was talking about doing the actual, the custom monitoring, you've got to be able to handle these backlog issues. So check mounts. This is a custom script that we had to write because as HP is working towards these separations and things, IP addresses are changing, mounts are becoming stale. We need to keep an eye on that. If the environment goes stale, we can't do anything about it, so we actually need to make sure what's going on. Another one would be the check memory usage. When I talked earlier, there wasn't a native way to get the memory information about the Java heap. So we wrote a custom script in Nagios to say, kick it all out. And you can see on the right-hand side, here's all this information from the last time it ran. Now we can actually pull this data out, use the API calls to actually start graphing it and say, okay, these numbers at this level don't make much sense, but once you actually start graphing it, you can make a ton of sense out of it. So let's go take a look at that. So we'll go to the EC team room, and we'll say, let's ask it to graph our memory for us. What's going on right now? So it comes back, it plots this information, and it's saying, okay, this is what's going on with your memory at this time. It went up, it cleaned up, it went down. It went up, it cleaned up, it went down. Normal behavior, like a normal Java stack. It's going to build up till it does a garbage collection and go back down. We're not seeing any weird spikes. It seems normal and happy. So this is being able to extrapolate that data from your monitoring and say, what is going on? So in some real world situations, you could say, well, a user came to me and said, hey, the web is not acting right. I'm trying to hit a website and it's not acting good. Well, let's go get that data from Nagios and see what's going on. Well, the pings look pretty good. Nothing really bad's going on. Everything seems happy. So now you can see that in the real world at real time. You can say, what is happening? What is going on? And instead of having to go, okay, let me go run a quick ping test. You're not sure if that's high or low. You can actually pull this over hours and tons of information. So you have other applications that allow you to get tons of information out of them. And they have connections to like StatsD and CollectD and all that type of great stuff. So we can go ask it, okay, well, we can take that information out, push it through Grafana and say, let's actually graph that stuff. So we can ask, this is another thing we taught our bot, what can he graph? Well, I know how to build every one of these graphs. All right, well, let's say a user comes up and says, hey, the system's not behaving right. What's going on? Well, let's look at the load. Let's see what's actually happening with the system in real time right now. It's actually going out, it's calling that service, it's querying it, and there it is. This is actual right now, what is happening. You can see that we've got this information over the last 6 hours right now. Okay, so that may be too much information. Maybe there's a spike at the end and you're like, okay, I see 6 hours and I see a spike at the end, but I need more information about that. Well, let's tell it just graph the last 2 hours instead. You can tell it that. It's going to go requery the system. It's going to bring that data back to you and show you, okay, here's the last 2 hours instead of 6. And you can build a better idea of what that spike actually was in the system. You can keep going for different distances as well. Let's say you have a memory issue and you want to say, well, how did it actually behave over the last week? All right, let's ask memory. Let's go 7 days. You can go 14 days, 21 days. As long as you have the information in your system, it's going to go build this for you and show you in real time what's going on. So as you see, it took it a second, but there we go. Here's the, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one, memory. You can see over the last 7 days, this is what's going on with our memory on our system. It looks good, it looks happy. But if there was an issue, I'd be able to say, okay, I can see we're having an issue right now. We're having a problem. We need to do something about it. Now this leads us to some of the fun stuff of being able to write some really cool automation and say, okay, let's say we found that the box was dirty and we're about to have an issue and we need to go do something. Well, I can just say, hey, we have a cache issue. Let's go fix that. Let's go run an EC job. It's going to go do this for me. So it's actually going to go run this for me. Well, I can actually just say, go do this and actually come back and say, what happened? There we go. So I can query it. It comes back. It talks to the REST API and says, okay, this is what I did. I connected to your app. I collected the cache. I flushed it, and I verified the integrity. Everything's alive. It's running all these jobs. So think of the idea of being able to build all from this. So once you have that general idea, you can say, okay, well, I can call Electric Flow to do one step, or I can call my Jenkins farm to do something. Well, keep building upon that. Now you can constantly build these jobs so you can do your automation pipelines. You can call it to do from the beginning to end and build everything out as needed. So we'll do a fun one for today. This will be the last little fun part. We'll actually commit a piece of code and watch our hammer redeploy itself with itself. So we'll go out to GitHub and we'll take a look. And we're going to go play with the Hubot. So I'll create a new branch. We'll just call this demo. All right, so we got a new branch in demo. We're going to go play with scripts. We have a fun one called fun. This is where we teach our bot to do just fun little things and come back with quirks and things like that for us. So I'm going to teach it a nice little one for today, because if you don't know what today is, it's a very fun one. Oh, this is going to be hard. I don't know if y'all are familiar with CoffeeScript, but it is very angry about spacing, so that is why I'm being very careful. Sorry. Does that look, Daniel, on your side, does that look straight? Okay. It's a little hard to see on this screen. So I've made a change. I'm happy with it. We're going to go down. We're going to go commit this and say, I did this. You know, in the real world, your boss is probably going to yell at you about not giving such a great explanation, but we'll come back to that. Why can't I see the bottom? I think, oh yeah, it's too big. Okay, so we're committing that change. Perfect. We committed to my branch. Everything's happy. We're going to go back. We're going to create a pull request because we're doing the right thing. And we're going to put it out there for somebody to actually go do it. So we've got a pull request. We've got it out there in the world. Someone needs to merge this for me. As you can see, Hammer's already telling me, hey, I saw this. It's got the webhooks out there to say, I don't know, I brought it back to this screen. Oh, no, wrong one. There we go. You can see in the GHE room, it came back. It said, hey, Lucas created a branch. Here's what I did. Here's all the information. It'll lead me back to there. We can look at what GitHub found. We can link back to the branch and everything that was actually done. Daniels wrote me back and said, everything looks good. We're ready to go. He's actually going to merge this up for me. So there it goes. Okay, so now all the scripts started catching. You can see that GHE, it's deploying it. It found that there was a change. It was merged. It was brought back to the master. It's actually going to deploy it. You can follow this information and see, look what the pull request was. Here was the head. It pulls up the information. You have this link to all this information that's happening. So now you have your teams where they're aware of what is happening in the environment, who's doing what, who approved it, when and where. You can see that Electric Flow actually found this, saw that it was out there, and is going to go merge that code, go check it, make sure everything's good, try to push it back to production. So you can see that it's actually running the job. It's deploying Hammer, dropping the Hammer. So it's making sure it's calling, like I said, the scripts that are reproducible. It's notifying Flowdocks that we're doing all this. It's redeploying the actual Qbot. And we can see that it's successful, so it's happy. So now I can go back out here to our team, and let's see. It says it's deployed and happy. And let's ask it the question. Hammer, what road do I take? Looks like I spelled it right. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Today is Back to the Future, so this is what's happening, and there it is. So, very nicely. So you can take this information and see how you can build upon it. I showed you a simple use case. We're trying to build this out further and bigger. The idea is being able to deploy your applications like this, saying, hey, the code was merged, it was checked, run it through the regression test. If it didn't make it, you can see up there, we got the full happy deploy and everything. But if it wasn't, you know, you would have the records and say, okay, what broke where? Did it not pass? Did it break? Or was it the fact that we just didn't meet the regression tests for things that we needed? So we can go back to one more slide for you guys. All right. So we've shown you a bunch of really cool stuff, and I wanted to summarize everything that went on today. So monitoring, self-healing, they are critical to your environment. It really helps dev and ops work together and be able to triage your issues. You see these baselines. You understand what is happening with your environment. The teams are made aware of these changes, what's going on. They can see what's happening. You have these baselines to actually build upon and say, okay, this was standard. This is what's good now. Even if you don't have the historical data, you can say, well, at least from this point, we knew it was working, so this is good. We can build upon this. And actually, the fun one, addressing issues before they become problems. I really like that term. And ChatOps is really helping you bring light to DevOps. I like that term too. You have these places where you have on-the-fly analysis. Everyone's working together in this centralized source of information. You have the visibility to see exactly what's happening to your environment, what's going on all the way from dev to pro. You have this audit trail that shows all the information that's happening, who's doing what, what's going on. So tons of great information. I hope it really resonated with y'all. And I want to thank you and ask you if you have any questions for me. We got Mark.
So, first of all, this must have really rose your CPI. But what I would really like to know is what was the biggest unanticipated
Okay, so I'll re-say the answer or the question. What did we learn from this? I guess that we didn't realize at the beginning would be a major improvement. Got that right? Okay, close. So being able to actually see this information real time, you talk about it and say, if I understood what my environment was doing, I could actually see it, but it doesn't really make a huge difference until you can say right now what is happening. So what happened for us was like I stated a while back, we had a memory issue, and it was terrible. It would happen at any point of the day. And it wasn't until we took the investment and built this out there that I could see what is happening. I could actually watch our monitoring pick it up and say, it's about to happen. You need to go fix this. We could watch our self-healing pick it up and do that. And I was like, I can sleep through the night again. This is amazing. So having that and being able to say, I no longer have to worry about that problem. I have to worry about what is behind that problem and what's going to do it, but my users aren't going to be yelling at me every day that something's wrong. They know that it's okay, it fixed itself, you're working on the resolution. Thanks.
So how are you passing all the credentials back and forth to the different tools that you're integrating?
Sure. So how are we passing credentials? I guess you're looking from it from a more security standpoint, making sure that people aren't logging in as somebody else or doing something like that?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, so for Hubot, or using our tool, our ChatOps and everything, it knows who you are. It has authentication through with your API tokens and things like that. So it keeps that information. It shows you who logged in, who did what, who's tied to your account. So if I use my phone, I can actually see and go into the backend and say, my name is tied to my browser and then this account. So I can see who's doing what and things like that. As far as the backend and automation, it's being able to, at the beginning I showed that quick little scalability about using the Chaos Monkey, and I couldn't call the call and then I could doing that. But Electric Cloud, the functionality of the ACLs and everything in the back end really help on that side to make sure who's doing what. So I have stored credentials that are stored encrypted in our database. So when it sees that I ran it, it passes it as my name. It goes and pulls my credential and runs it against me. If you did it, it would run against your credentials. So we use that kind of functionality to make sure that we're using the right credentials and they're all taken care of, encrypted. Any other questions? Oh, you're back. What do you got, Mark?
So this is switching over to this ChatOps model. Have you create almost everything from scratch, or were you able to reuse a lot of things you already had?
Yeah. So did we have to start from scratch when we built out ChatOps? So we have a lot of innovative people at HP, and all these people are doing different things. And we had a team actually go out and invent 3 or 4 different ChatOps systems, and they found out what actually worked for us. At the beginning, we weren't sure what we needed, what we were trying to build. So we used one tool, it lacked some functionality. We went to another tool, the APIs were lacking. And until we found one that actually just kind of worked for us, and that being Flowdock at this point, it worked really well. And then on top of that, Hubot's an open source, so you can go out there, I think, to GitHub, pull his code down, and there's tons of examples. I think the only learning pain you're going to have there is learning CoffeeScript if you're not familiar. But on top of it, it was really once you catch that basic, because it comes out of the box with 10, 15 scripts that do different things, you can say, okay, even though I don't fully understand the technology, at least I have examples of working. And then you can start tweaking those and saying, okay, let's make it do something a little bit different. Let's do something a little bit more fun. And then eventually you start building up and keep building further and further to where at the end you see that the massive integrations to multiple tools and deploying and kicking off webhooks. So the idea is kind of like DevOps, you start small, you build it a little piece, and then you just keep growing and growing and growing. Good question. Anybody else? Oh.
So, what's kind of the order of events, or how do you get from, you have your procedures, you have your way of getting the things done in each case. What's your timeline, or what's your order to get to that stuff?
So let me see if I understand this. How do we understand what needs to be self-healed, or?
Or once you know how to create the environment, you know how to get these things in place,
Mm-hmm.
but for the self-healing,
Mm-hmm.
how do you identify the actions to take? If something breaks, how do you identify, oh, it broke this way, here's how I fix it, or you just do it?
Okay, so yeah, it depends on what we're actually trying to fix. And self-healing could be the answer to your problem, or it could be like a Band-Aid on top of it, like that JBoss thing. Yeah, it fixes it, it restarts it, and we found that service was dead, so we have a monitor looking for that, and we fix it. But we're not fully addressing the problem at that point, and that's what we're trying to. What that does is it buys us more time to put that on our backlog and say, this is becoming an issue and a priority, and now we need to work with our stakeholders and say, who's actually going to do it? When is it actually going to get vetted into the process? So hopefully I answered that correctly. All right. Oh.
How much pushback did you get from your developers about being plugged in the chat all the time and having pop-ups on there?
So, okay. So how much pushback did we get from our teams pushing them to a new tool and working with ChatOps? And I'm sure most of you are aware, nobody likes to be forced into change or to pick up a new tool for the sake of picking up a tool. And the thing was, it started small. They threw me in there and I started using it. I was like, okay, I don't see the real gain. And I'd talk for a little bit and we'd share information, but really nothing happened. It wasn't until we started really understanding what is ChatOps, and they were talking about, well, it's the bots. The bots are half the work. And we actually stood up our own bot and put it in the room, and I wrote a command to it, and it talked back, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm hooked now. As a developer, I had all the fun now at this point. And the second part is getting the ops to understand. And once you start building out these integrations and being able to show that type of information, they're going to get hooked. You know, if you can show them right now, this is what's happening, you can't pass the blame. You can say, no, the networking's bad. No, the ops team comes back and says, no. I'm like, all right, here's the graph right now, real time. This is happening. Fix it. Now you can understand how they can go, okay, well, how do I get you back? How do I show exactly this is your problem? So everyone starts working together and building this out and showing there's no more blame anymore. You're all a team and you're all trying to solve the same problem. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.